So, Paige, firstly, a big warm welcome onto the Legal Brew.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So, I guess the backstory to kind of talk about why you're here today and how we've come to, come across one another is we're always obviously on the Legal Brew looking for interesting people to talk to. And one thing that's been, in the industry press for a long time, not just the industry press, but I think just the press in general, is about being a mum and having children and, being able to have a career alongside achieving. So we thought a few weeks ago, or a few months ago even, we would go on the search to find a lawyer in the legal industry who had children at a young age in their career, and we would interview them about how they do that. So we started the search to find this person and thought it would be quite easy to find, but actually we struggled to find anyone who has had children at a young age and is still working. The only people we could find for a long time were people who were part time or maybe had worked but then left the profession. So it really started to make me think, well, why is this the case? And then we came across your lovely self, and the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because you are, a rare commodity, being a female, having children, but having them at a very young age and still managing to juggle, a full-time job that is being a mother, but also still pursuing your legal career. And when we spoke prior to recording this, you told me a bit about your story, and I thought it was just absolutely fascinating how you've got to where you are. So I wanted to get you on. So that's the
Yes, thank
background
you.
for everybody. So there's a bit of context there. So let's go back in time. Actually, before we do, tell us what you do at the moment.
Yep. So at
What's
the
your
moment,
role?
I am a senior associate at Freeths in the commercial dispute resolution team in Nottingham.
Lovely. And you had your son, who is now 9,
Yep.
as a surprise at university. Tell us about your
Yes.
experience.
Yes. So my son, bless him, he'll be 9 in February, so he's not quite 9 yet. But he was a surprise one. I was in my break just between second and final year of my LLB law degree. As I say, he wasn't planned. He was a surprise one, and me and my partner had been together 6 months at that point, so not very long at all. Um, I'll never forget the day that I told my dad, and he just went, "What about your degree?" And I was like, "It's fine. We'll make it work. We'll get it done. I've got 1 year left." Following which, I obviously had to tell university and figure out how that was going to look because I was due in the February and exams wouldn't have been until the June, July time. And those were my finals. So all the big stuff.
Lot
And
of pressure, lots of
a
pressure.
lot of pressure anyway, let alone throwing that into the mix. And I
Mm.
was I was only 20. So that came as it was a very big moment in my life. And a lot of questions were asked about, was it the right time? How was I going to manage? Did I need to defer? And ultimately myself and my now husband made the decision that no, we'd done this, we'd got ourselves in this position, we knew we wanted children eventually. It'd just come a lot sooner than expected, so we were going to try and make it work. And then came the point that I told the university, which was where it got a little bit interesting. And I think I explained to you before when we had our chat that it wasn't a very positive conversation. There was a lot of, are you sure? Can you manage? Your grades will suffer. Your relationship with your baby might suffer. And that really threw me. And I just thought, how on earth am I having this conversation with another woman who I
Mm.
knew had her own 2 children? Um, but that for me was red rag to the bull. Um,
Yeah, and I think I understand the university has a duty of care and they're there to try and help you get through the degree. But for someone to be giving you, such serious advice, not just about your career, but what they were ultimately talking about is advising. Well, it almost sounds like it was an ultimatum. It was either
Yeah, that's how
term,
it felt.
yeah, it's like terminate the son for the if you want to continue to the degree or halt the degree. It sounded like it wasn't even fathomable that it was even possible to do both, and that wasn't entertained.
No, it was very much one or the other. And this was a tutor that had already taught me the year before, who knew me, knew my work ethic, and probably should have given a lot more encouragement than she did.
So someone that you
However,
had a long relationship with and had, you know, built up a
yeah,
level of rapport and probably trust with. This wasn't just, you know, some person
yeah,
within the university who didn't know you.
precisely. And I felt when I found out that she was the person that was going to be my point of contact, I felt so relieved that it was someone that I knew and it wasn't a new person. And I thought, actually, no, that's really helpful. And that made me feel so much more comfortable in having that conversation. And then when I walked into the conversation, it was completely not what I expected.
So you had that conversation, and obviously at that kind of stage, you and your partner had sort of said, right, we're gonna, you know, make this work. We've got
Yeah,
ourselves into this situation. We want to continue with this. You had the conversation with the university tutor, and then where did you go from there? How did you, you know, how did you get through it, and what was your experiences in the latter part of your university
yeah.
days?
So it was very much, I think the best way to describe it is I concealed it. It was baggy jumpers, lectures as normal, get to the seminars, get in, get out. And then I knew that after the Christmas break, when most of my seminars were done, that I probably wouldn't be going back after that because of where my due date fell in the early new year. But all of the lectures and seminars were recorded. So after
Mm,
Christmas, I just watched the video recordings of the teaching and I carried on that way. Ultimately until my son was born in early February. So there wasn't a lot of support at that point. And actually I didn't feel like I could go and reach out for support that wasn't there either because of the reception that I'd received from the first conversation, which was difficult. I was navigating something completely new, as was my partner,
mm,
and we're lucky in that we have family around us, but none of them had been to university. I was the first of my family to go, so they couldn't help me navigate that either. So it was really forging my own path and
mm,
working out for myself how I wanted it to pan out. When it came to exam period, they did help somewhat more at the university. They put in additional measures so that I could have extra time because I was breastfeeding as well. So I had half an hour break within the exam time to go and do that. But that was it. That was the extent of the help.
oh, blimey, blimey. You can understand why you felt the need to kind of conceal it because it almost felt like it was being kind of frowned upon. And you know, you were going through a lot of that period. So I've never personally been to university, but I would have thought that at that point that was put on their radar. You know, support would have been there in abundance to you. You know, it just sounds like madness. So you got through the exams. You've obviously got your son who is very young. Did
Yeah.
you? Where did you go from there? Was it straight into a training contract?
Not quite. So I had some time off because I'd been working part-time whilst studying full-time and whilst being pregnant. So that was fun. And that meant that I had some statutory maternity pay. So I had some time off with my son once I'd finished university until the September. And then I went back to work part-time to the job that I'd previously been in, which wasn't a legal job. It was just in a restaurant. It was hospitality. So I was really conscious that I didn't want to be doing that because it was evening work. And I started looking for jobs in the legal profession
Mm-hmm.
just to get some experience more than anything. We're taught that you need to get a job and get some experience under your belt, because that might lead to a training contract, and no one's going to take you if you've got no experience. So I was really conscious of that. So I applied for 3 roles, and safe to say that that didn't go very well either, to be honest. 2 of those roles in interview, I mentioned that I had a baby, and I didn't get offered either of those jobs. And in the 3rd interview, I thought, I'm going to test the water here, and I'm not going to mention it at all. So I went into that interview, didn't mention that I was a young mum, didn't mention the fact that I had a young family, and hey presto, got the job.
You said to me actually before, when we spoke previously, that both of the interviews kind of went really, really well, the first 2 interviews. And it was kind of when you mentioned the child, there was almost sort of a changing of subtle expressions, which, you know, is, you know, you could put that down to a coincidence, but, you know, I think
it felt very relevant.
Yeah, it felt very relevant, and I think that there's definitely merit in that coincidence. So you go into you get offered the role. At what stage do you you know do you sort of bring up that you've got a young family?
I think it was probably about a week in.
Okay.
But the office that I was in was a small branch office, so I was working in a regional firm, and the office was all ladies.
Oh, okay.
Older ladies that had grown-up children, and some of them children that were about my age at that point. But I just felt a little bit more comfortable knowing that I was surrounded by people that had probably been through similar things to me, juggling work and having kids. So I kind of just dropped it in there, and I was like, oh yeah, my son's 1 at this point. And they were like, oh, you've got a child. And I was like, yeah, yeah. He's at nursery now. We'll go pick him up after this. So yeah, I think, and actually in hindsight, I don't think it would have made any difference had I mentioned it in that particular interview, because of the type of firm that it was and because of who I was working alongside. So it may be that had I mentioned it, it would have ended up with the same outcome. But after the first 2, I was just very, very cautious, and I thought, well, let's see if that is the underlying reason, and rather than my CV.
Makes sense. So, what's been your experiences of going? Because obviously, legal is I think it's a very unforgiving industry. I think that it's very tough, and you know, you make a bad career move, you have time out. I think lawyers, being very risk adverse individuals, you know, are very quick to kind of, you know, pass someone down sometimes as well. What's been your experiences then of kind of going through the motions of trying to juggle, you know, motherhood and, you know, full-time work, and not just full-time work, trying to get experience and, you know, all the things that go with trying to rise up the ranks of the years of PQE?
Yeah, so, you know, parenting's hard. Saying that is complete understatement, but juggling that with a legal career as one of the most challenging jobs we could probably do, that elevates the difficulty substantially. You know, that can't be understated at all. But I do think it's possible to find a balance between work and family and enjoying the benefits of both. As I say, I'm very lucky that I've got a good support network around me. I'm not speaking from a single parent perspective. I think that would probably take it to a whole new level again. But putting the resources in place to allow you to work full time, again, isn't easy. I was a paralegal to start off with in my first legal job, and then I progressed within, so I started in the February. By the following year, I was a trainee. So that first year, I was not on a great salary at all. It was a small regional firm, and I also then had to factor in nursery fees, which cost more than my mortgage did.
Oh goodness, it's crazy, isn't it?
It was, and my partner again was working full time, but he was in a different sector. He's not a lawyer. He's not in the legal field at all. So we had to compartmentalize our life so that he would then work weekends to have 2 days off in the week, so that we didn't have to pay for nursery 5 days a week, because that would have just crippled us, and it would have meant that there would have been no point in me working.
Isn't that sad that we're kind of in that situation? It's we could probably go off down a 20-minute political tangent here, but
yeah,
I think we need a system in this country which is similar to that of the Japanese system, which encourages and the Japanese system basically works on points, and you get so many points depending on your income and circumstances. And that means that, if you are on a lower income, or your income is at a certain threshold, you will get full-time nursery places, and then it kind of staggers. And it's a very good system, because actually what it does is it stimulates the economy, because it gets everyone out of work. And I just can't understand how we're in this situation where it works out better for someone not to work than to work. It's just bonkers. And it needs to change, because we got in this country, it was mentioned in the news the other day, but we're now at the lowest ever birth rate, not just in this country but globally, 1.4 children to every woman, which is very low. And if we're going to sort this out, there needs to be, it's so expensive to have a child. I just don't know how it's possible for so many people.
Yeah, expensive in money and in time, I think. And I think there's so many factors that fall into people's decision making now, whether they're going to have children and at what age. Because if I look at the team that I work in at the moment, we're all of a similar age bracket. I'm the only one with a child.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think a lot of women are having children a lot later, and then I think the reason why I wanted to get you on as well is because it feels like it's a choice between having a child and rising up the career ladder. And doing recruitment every day, males find it a lot easier to progress for a whole multitude of reasons. Obviously, a complex subject, but I think more needs to be done. And I think this childcare situation is absolute madness of how much it costs. It's just crazy. Good business to be in, it seems like, the nursery sector.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It seems like it. Might change career.
Well, yeah, my accountant, though, someone who owns the nursery, and they make a crazy amount of money because of the fees there. So moving on then to, generally, there's going to be females and males as well watching this, who are thinking, who might, just have found out that they are pregnant, who might be considering it, feeling that they're going to have to, make a decision. What strikes me about you, Paige, is you are very driven and very strong as an individual. You even with, when we first spoke, I thought, I really like Paige. She's got this fire about her where she doesn't stop to get what she wants. But, not everyone is necessarily like that. I guess, what advice would you give to individuals, kind of trying to work their way and find their way through the complexities of, having a child and trying to have a career in the legal industry?
I think that's such a complicated question.
It is such a complicated question, I know.
there's no perfect formula to balance the responsibilities of work and family. So some weeks are better than others. I think self-care is a necessity. It's important to remember that taking care of your own well-being is not selfish, it's mandatory in these circumstances, because you can't pour from an empty cup, to coin a phrase. So, having that downtime, having rest and sleep with children, we all know that doesn't come easily.
Not conducive.
But no, exactly. It's critical for a high functioning parent as well as a high functioning lawyer. So get those sleep hours in wherever you can. But also it's fundamentally important to understand that you are just one human being, and there are many competing priorities for your time as a parent and as a professional. So it's balance. I think that's the only way that I can explain it, is it's finding balance in order to support and maintain a career and a family. Organization as well. My calendar is crazy to look at. My work calendar and my home calendar, there's color coding and things all over the place. But it's just finding the routine that works for you and setting your own priorities. I think the thing that helped me most when I entered the legal profession is I already had my son. So I already had that in the forefront of my mind. And I felt, well, he's really my priority. As much as I want my career, he can't fend for himself yet. So he always came first. And when I planned my diaries, it was him first, him first, him first. Whereas now he's that bit older, although I have got a 2-year-old as well now. So I'm kind of back to there a little bit.
Oh, I was going to ask you, did you have another?
Oh, yes, yes, we've got two.
It hasn't scarred you too much.
No. Yeah, we've got a son and a daughter, and she is definitely mini mummy, very tenacious, tells me on a daily what she does and doesn't want to do. So yeah, the apple doesn't fall far.
It doesn't.
But yeah, just having a good plan for your time and small goals, small achievable goals, regular things that you want to work towards that are ultimately realistic. I never really wanted to be the lawyer that was traveling here, there, and everywhere. That wasn't my desire for my career. I think having a realistic expectation of what you can achieve if you also want a family is also probably the key. I can't be jumping on a flight doing cross-jurisdictional work when I've got 2 kids at home to think about as well. It's not going to work, is it? It's not viable.
No, it's not viable.
So if you want that level of career, that's probably a different conversation. But it is definitely possible to have a successful legal career. I'm working at a great firm now. I took the jump not that long ago to come and work at Freeths. And actually, I'm finding that whilst a lot of people said, oh, are you sure that's a much bigger firm? They're going to expect more from you. They're going to want more hours. Your targets are going to be higher. Yeah, that's all true. However, the infrastructure is there in place to make my day-to-day work more seamless. So I don't feel like it's as strenuous as I thought it was going to be. I am still managing to maintain that balance, but also I've put boundaries in place for myself, and everybody knows that I have children from the start. So if they're poorly, as they were 2 weeks ago, one after the other with a sickness bug, I worked from home. You know, that is there now, and I don't think it probably was before. And I think there is this mentality maybe that things haven't progressed in the way that they have in some firms. Don't get me wrong, I think there's probably still firms out there that are working as if it was back in the day, and the flexible working isn't there, and the mums aren't allowed to do work and mum. But I found at the 2 firms that I've worked at, actually, that hasn't necessarily been the case. So maybe it's about finding the sort of focusing on the culture of the firm might be the best way to approach it.
With the benefit of experience, wisdom, and that comes with age, what advice would the Paige of today give to the Paige back at university who'd found out she was pregnant?
Do exactly what you did.
Okay.
Trust your guts and do it. If that's where your mind is and that's where your heart is, go for it. And don't let that person stand in your way, because only you know what you're capable of.
Do you know what? I absolutely love that. And I think it's very inspiring to hear your story. And I thank you for coming and sharing it with us. It's been a delight. And hopefully this is going to be a really good episode for people that might be in a bit of a quandary, perhaps might have just found out they've got a child on the way, perhaps might be considering a child. It is possible. But what we do know about you, Paige, statistically, is you are, you know, in the minority, because we found it difficult to find you. So Thank you so much for coming on to the Legal Brew. It's been a delight.
Thank you so much for having me. And if there is anybody in that situation, then they are absolutely free to reach out on LinkedIn, and happy to have a chat always.